local government. Now, local self-government is the management of local affair by such local bodies which have been elected by the local people. Now, PRI was constitutionalized through the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1992 to build democracy at grassroots level and was entrusted with the task of rural development in the country. Now, after the constitution came into force, Article 40 made a mention of panchayats, and Article 246 empowers the state legislature to legislate with respect to any subject relating to local self-government. Now, let's look at the committees formed to materialize PRI. Now, the first one that needs a special mention is that of Ashok Mehta Committee, which was formed in 1977. Now, let's look at some of the committees formed to materialize PRI. Ashok Mehta Committee of 1977 recommended a two-tier Panchayati Raj institution structure consisting of Zilla Parishad and Mandal Panchayat. Now, GVK Rao Committee, which was in 1985, recommended making the district as the basic unit of planning, also holding regular elections. Now, LM Singhvi Committee of 1986 recommended providing more financial resources and constitutional status to Panchayat to strengthen them. Now, the result was 73rd and 74th constitutional amendments by the Parliament in December 1992. Through these amendments, local self-government was introduced in rural and urban India. Now, some of the salient features of the constitutional 73rd and 74th amendments are added two new parts to the constitution, namely Part 9, titled the Panchayat, added by the 73rd amendment, and Part 9A, titled the Municipalities, added by 74th amendment. Now, basic units of democratic system are Gram Sabha, which are the villages, Ward Committee, which are the municipalities, comprising of all adult members registered as voters. Now, the three-tier system of panchayats at village, intermediate level, which is at block, taluk or mandal level, and district level, except in states with population below 20 lakhs. Now, this is Article 243B. Now, seats at all level to be filled by direct elections, that is Article 243C, Clause 2. Now, seats are to be reserved for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, and the chairpersons of the panchayat at all level also shall be reserved for SC and STs in proportion to their population. Now, one-third of the total number of seats is to be reserved for women. One-third of the seats reserved for SC and STs also reserved for women. One-third office of chairpersons at all levels reserved for women, that is Article 243D. Now, uniform 5-year term and elections to constitute new bodies to be completed before the expiry of the term. Now, in event of dissolution, elections compulsorily held within 6 months, that is Article 243E. Now, independent election commission in each state for superintendence, direction and control of the electoral roll, that is Article 243K. Now, panchayats to prepare for economic development and social justice in respect of subjects as devolved by law to the various levels of panchayat, including the subjects illustrated in 11th schedule, that is Article 243G. So, 11th schedule is getting its constitutional status from the article of 243G. Now, let's move on to 74th amendment, which provides for a district planning committee to consolidate the plans prepared by panchayats and municipalities, which is given in Article 243ZD. Moving on, we have budgetary allocations from state government, share of revenue of certain taxes, collection and retention of revenues it raises, central government programs and grants, Union Finance Commission grants, which is mentioned in Article 243H. Now, moving forward, it also seeks to establish a finance commission in each state to determine the principle on which adequate financial resources would be ensured for panchayats and municipalities, which is Article 243I. Now, the 11th schedule of the Constitution places as many as 29 functions within the purview of Panchayati Raj bodies. Now, let's look at the 11th schedule, some of the functional items. Now, agriculture, including agricultural expansion, land improvement, implementation of land reforms, consolidation, and soil conservation. Animal husbandry, dairy, poultry. Now, fisheries and trustees are also placed with 11th schedule. Moving on, we have minor irrigation projects, water management, watershed development. Social forestry and farm forestry also find its mention. Small-scale industries in which food processing industry is involved. Minor forest produce, safe water for drinking. Khadi village and cottage industries, rural housing, fuel and fodder. Rural electrification, including distribution of electricity. Road, culverts, bridges, ferries, waterways, and other means of communication and transportations. Education, including primary and secondary schools. Non-conventional sources of energy. Technical training and vocational education. Adult and non-formal education. Public distribution system. Maintenance of community assets. Welfare of the weaker section, in particular of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Social welfare, including the welfare of handicapped and mentally retarded. Family welfare, women and child, market and fairs. Health and sanitation, including hospitals, primary health centers, dispensaries, cultural activities, library, poverty alleviation programs. Moving on, we have PISA, that is Panchayat Extension to Scheduled Areas, PISA 1996. Now, it was an act passed by the Parliament to ensure self-government to scheduled areas. 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act doesn't apply to scheduled areas. Now, for scheduled areas, areas referred in Clause 1 of Article 244. Now, the provisions of the Act states that the state legislation on panchayats shall recognize their customary laws, social and religious practices. Now, functions of the Gram Sabha are to state legislation shall recognize their customary law and religious practices, selection and identification of beneficiaries under poverty alleviation programs. Note that the Gram Sabha shall be competent to safeguard and preserve the traditions and customs of the people, their cultural identity, community resources, and customary mode of disputes. Certificates for utilization of funds. Now, reservation of seats in proportion to the population of the community. ST reservation at least 50% in these areas. Chairperson at all levels to scheduled tribes. Gram Sabha or Panchayat at appropriate level consulted before acquisition of land for development project. Now, planning and management of minor water bodies, Gram Panchayat at appropriate level. Recommendation is required for grant of license or mining lease for minor minerals and grant of concessions for exploitation of minor minerals. Now, further, Gram Sabha Panchayat at appropriate level may be endowed with power to enforce prohibitions or regulate or restrict the sale and consumption of any intoxicant, ownership of minor forest produces, power to prevent alienation of land in scheduled areas, power to exercise control over money lending to scheduled tribes, power to manage village markets, the power to exercise control over institutions and functionaries in all social sectors, the power of control over local plans and resources. Now let's look at some of the urban governments in the country. The first one is the municipal corporation administration, which is responsible for the administration of big cities where population is greater than 10 lakhs. Now it was established by the Act of State Legislatures. Union territories, it is established by this Act of Parliament. Now, the authorities under this municipal corporation are municipal councils, elected members, deliberative and legislative wing, headed by mayor, 1 year elected. Now, it changes from state to state, as we have seen that it is under state legislature. Now, standing committee to facilitate the functioning of the council deals with the public works. Municipal commissioner. Now, it is an authority which implements the decision taken by the council. Chief executive authority appointed by the state government. Let's look at municipality. Now, the administration of towns and smaller cities set up by Act of State Legislature. Union territories, it is again Act of Parliament. Now, authorities established are municipal council, which performs deliberative and legislative functions. Councillors directly elected by people. President or chairman heads the council, enjoys executive power. Little different from mayor of municipal corporation, enjoys executive powers. Now, standing committee facilitates the functioning of the council, deals with public works. Let's move on to chief executive officer, responsible for day-to-day administration, appointed by the state government. Now, state area committees established by notification in the official government gazette, either a fast developing town or town yet to fulfill the conditions necessary for constitution of municipality, but important for state government. Now, functions under the framework of State Municipal Act. Other functions as may also be entrusted. Note, different from municipalities, as in notified area committee, all members are nominated. Now, town area committee established by an act of state legislature for small towns, limited civic level functions are carried out, drainage, road, and street lighting, etc. Completely elected or nominated, or partly elected or nominated, depending upon the state act. Now, moving on to the cantonment boards established by an act of parliament, Cantonment Board Act of 2006 for civilian administration of cantonment areas, administrative control of Ministry of Defense. Partly elected and nominated members, military commanding officer is the ex officio president. Vice President is the elected member. Executive officer is appointed by the President who executes the decision. Example IDES, Indian Defence Estate Services. Moving on, we have townships, industrial establishments providing civic communities notified by the governor, administrator appointed by the enterprise. Now, port trust, major ports are created by an act of parliament. Right now, there are 12 major ports, both elected and nominated members. Special purpose agencies, these are functions based and not area based agencies established by a act of state legislature or executive resolution as well. Now, 12 scheduled functional items include regulation of land use and construction of land buildings, urban planning including town planning, planning for economic and social development, urban poverty alleviation, water supply for domestic, industrial and commercial purposes, fire services, public health sanitation, conservancy and solid waste management, slum improvement, upgradation, safeguarding the interest of weaker sections of the society, including physically handicapped and mentally unsound. Moving on, we have urban forestry, protection of environment, promotion of ecological aspects, construction of roads and bridges, provisions for urban amenities, and has facilities such as park, garden, playground, promotion of cultural, educational, and aesthetic aspects, burial and burial grounds, cremation and cremation grounds, electric crematoriums, cattle ponds, prevention of cruelty to animals, regulation of slaughterhouses and tanneries, public amenities including street lighting, parking spaces, bus stops, public convenience, vital statistics including registration of births and deaths, also under PRIs.